We are here for a very special event today to recognize the work of Bolt for the Heart, IU Health, and the Indiana State Police Alliance, but you're going to hear much more about that from people more important than I am and that have worked very hard to bring this date together for what we're doing today to be able to present all of these automatic external defibrillators. At this time, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you the Superintendent of the Indiana State Police, Doug Carter.
Dave, thank you very, very much. This is a really big day for us for a number of reasons, but I would be remiss to not recognize some of the most important people in the room, the folks that are the recipients of these AEDs and the troopers from all over Indiana. I continue to be in awe of them, and to be able to stand with them at a time like this is a really big deal to me. This started some time ago, and I never thought we'd be where we are today, here issuing almost 100 of these AEDs to these troopers around Indiana. As an example to me of what happens when a community comes together with a common cause, and this common cause was born through a process of engagement with Bolt for the Heart, specifically Pierre TWER. Pierre's here, and you'll hear from him here in just a moment. A year and a half ago, we were acquaintances, and we really didn't know each other, but they had this idea that they were going to equip every state police car in Indiana with an AED. We started with those rural areas around Indiana where there's a high likelihood of our folks being the first on the scene of these kinds of situations and incidents, whether it be on or off duty. Last Thanksgiving Day was the start of all this, at least for us specifically. It grew into now the second year, this last Thanksgiving, and this is the end result of that effort. Tremendous opportunities, both to be there in person at this race in Carmel on Thanksgiving morning, but there's also an opportunity to do this from afar. And we can certainly talk more about that in the future, but it gives people the opportunity to participate in this process and in this initiative anywhere in Indiana at any time with any group that they choose. So I think it's certainly a thing of the future. Another partnership that grew from this was a partnership with IU Health, specifically John Goebel. And John is an absolutely terrific, inspiring leader who also saw the need to partner with Bolt and Pierre and Troy Flugner to bring IU to the table. And IU coming to the table was a really big deal for us. Number one, we partnered with IU Health with our Heart Initiative about 2.5, almost 3 years ago now, and actually saved lives within the ISP organization, and in large part because of the partnership with IU Health and the tests that were done for our employees over the course of about a 12-month period of time. That's how my relationship with IU began. My friendship with John Goebel came over time, specifically related to the AEDs and their partnership and incredible, incredible contributions to being able to purchasing additional AEDs for the folks around Indiana. Again, I'd be remiss to not mention one more time. This is an example of what happens when communities come together for a common cause. And all these troopers that are standing around me today taught me that community engagement is real and it works. And these are the kinds of things that happen when communities trust us and they believe in us and they understand that we certainly do have needs. And this is an example of service that's much greater than ourselves, and I'm so very, very proud of it. With all that said, I've mentioned Pierre TWER a couple times in my remarks. Pierre's taught me more about life than I think anybody has in a long, long time, and about commitment, self-service, and self-sacrifice for something much greater than himself. And he continues to exhibit that each and every day at each and every one of these events. And I'm so very, very proud of him and what he's accomplished, but most importantly, I'm really, really proud to be able to call him my friend. So with that said, I'd like to introduce to you Pierre TWER.
Well, thank you, Superintendent Carter. What a great honor and a great pleasure today is. And what a celebration. We feel very blessed and have great gratitude in knowing that we've, in a small way, have made a difference. But before we get on to the people we want to thank, I'd like to thank all of you for your efforts and what you do for the people of the state of Indiana. As I've gotten to know the state police a little bit closer, and I'm happy to say I've not met any of you before today, which is good. I've met, obviously, Captain BURSTEN and Superintendent Carter. But I want to thank all of you on behalf of the Board of Directors of Bolt for the Heart. Thank you for what you do for us. There's a great peace of mind in knowing what you do, and it's very important work. And as significant these AEDs are, it's just another piece of what you do every single day. So we thank you for that. Really, the mission of Bolt for the Heart is an organization where we looked at a group of us got together, a group of friends, and we looked at placing AEDs in the hands of first responders and people that are in need. What brought this around for us is we had one of our cardiologists, board members, was doing an examination on one of your colleagues. And after the exam, the cardiologist said, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" He said, "Sure, no, I don't mind." He said, "Do you have an AED in your car?" It's kind of a random question for your doctor to ask you. But he said, "I do not, but I'd like to have one. I know some of my partners have them, but we desperately need them." Well, ironically, that night, we had a board meeting, and Dr. Elsner brought that to our attention. And as we started digging through the numbers, we realized that the first responders to an incident are typically police officers. And so we thought, what better way to serve back to the community than to put AEDs in the hands of all of you. So that's when the discussion started with Captain BURSTEN and Superintendent Carter, and realized there was a great need for that. So last year's proceeds, this year's proceeds, and next year's proceeds, until we get all the AEDs placed in every car, that's what our goal is. So we made a big dent on that this year, I'm really pleased to say. And Bolt, essentially, we're looking at about 215 AEDs throughout the whole Indiana State Police Force right now. That number is closer to 400 to completely blanket the organization, and that's what our goal is. But there are many people involved in this organization. A lot of hands make my work very light. And I want to thank all the participants from this year's Bolt for the Heart. We had a record turnout for the race on Thanksgiving morning. If you remember that morning, it was kind of cool, but people turned out. And we had 300 people sign up in the last 24 hours of the day before and the race morning. Kind of stressed the staff out a little bit because that's quite a turnout. But we moved about 10% of our registrations just that morning. And I think a lot of that has to do with the work that Superintendent Carter had done, Dave BURSTEN, Rich Myers, getting the word out that the state police is behind this initiative. And I couldn't be any prouder than the state police's involvement in this. So essentially about 2,800 runners showed up. That's about 1,000 more than last year at this time. And what that means is each registration is about $30. So that's another $30,000 that we made just in registrations. And as you all know, all those proceeds go directly to buying external defibrillators. But there's another group I want to thank too. I want to thank my board of directors. These guys are good friends of mine. They're esteemed professionals in their professions, business owners, cardiologists, cardiac surgeons. They've been the backbone of what we're doing, and I so appreciate them very, very much. I'd also like to thank all the volunteers in helping us put on the race. That's a pretty significant number. And we also had a number of your colleagues. Just a show of hands, was anybody at the Thanksgiving race this last week giving out medals? Handing out medals? Okay. For all you that didn't know, we had finishers medals to all the finishers. So we had some of your partners handing out medals to the finishers of the race. That was extremely well received. So thank you for doing that. Buying AEDs is not an inexpensive thing. Each AED runs about $1,500. We're able to buy them in bulk, so we get a break on that. But to outfit that, you can imagine it's a pretty significant number. So as I mentioned earlier, all our revenues come from registration, people that register for the race. Also, we had a number of people this year that would register for the race and also make an additional donation, anywhere from $5 to $100. So that number year over year increased substantially. But really, where the significant impact from this year has occurred are sponsors and people that just donated significant amounts of money. And I think it's worthy of acknowledging a lot of these folks. I would like to acknowledge McGowan Insurance. They stepped up in a big way. The Meisenholder family from Carmel, Farm Bureau Insurance, Orange Theory Fitness, If you guys were at the race, they had about 100 people from Orange Theory running the race in orange tutus. You couldn't miss them. But there's a collaborative, supportive effort for what we're doing. The best running store in the city of Indianapolis, Runners Forum, has been very supportive of us. REI, great support from them because they allowed us to use the Tarkington lobby. On Thanksgiving morning, it was 38 degrees, so that nice warm lobby was very nice for many people. I'm not sure if some people even left. I think they just kind of stayed in there. I'd like to thank Marsh Supermarkets. They provided all our food, all our water, all our bananas, everything we needed. They just did a turnkey, and they just said, we're in. We believe in what you're doing. So it's very gracious of them. I'd also like to thank one more person here, and that's Troy Flugner. Troy is the very tall man back in the corner over there that is the representative for cardiac science. He is a true professional. He's all in. He believes in what we're doing and has been nothing but a tremendous resource for all of us. So, Troy, I really thank you for all your support and effort. I'd also like to thank the Joel Muldoon family, who they've made significant contributions to the race. The Dave Hollander family, they donated enough to buy one AED. Dr. Greg Elsner donated enough to buy an AED. Performance Services, a very significant donation by them. Living Generously as an organization in Carmel, they donated enough for us to buy 8 additional AEDs. We'll talk more later about the Indiana State Police Alliance. Dave Kirkham in that group, 10 AEDs. And then the IU Health Department of Community Outreach and Engagement, they had some money left over in their budget at the end of the year. And I got a phone call, a random phone call one afternoon, and said, hey, tell me a little bit more about your organization. Told them about it. And I think that Melissa was aware of our organization a little bit, but she was just kind of understanding the confirmation of our mission. And she goes, well, great. Well, we'll even have some money left over in our budget this year to help you out. And she said, let me get back to you. She got back to me a couple days later. She said, yeah, we have enough to buy 30 AEDs for you. That's a significant contribution. So thank you to them. I'd also like to thank the, as Superintendent Carter mentioned, John Goebel and IU Health North. I can't say enough about this organization from a manpower, personnel, professionalism standpoint. They have been fantastic. And their resources and from a donation standpoint and all in has been just outstanding. And we'll talk more about that here in a second. But they have been involved with us for the last 3 years in sponsoring the race, which we really thank them for that. And they've also hosted our packet pickup. So all 2,800 people went through the lobby of IU Health North to pick up their packet information, and that was really a special day as well. I'd also like to thank the IU Health Cardiovascular Department, led by Vice President of Service Line, of Cardiovascular Service Line Leader, Mary Baker. Again, money left over in the budget. Where do we put it? We believe in what you're doing. Here's enough to buy 50 AEDs. It's pretty significant numbers. I'd also like to thank overall IU Health. The impact that they made last year and this year represents about $125,000 in financial donations to this bold organization, and that is just phenomenal. So thank you. Anybody here that's here from IU, thank you so much for that. I'd also like to thank my family. They've been very supportive of me, and especially my wife, Susan, who's helped me fuel this passion and has been with me from the start of this and has stood behind me and said, continue forward, this is something worthwhile. And we hope that you never have to use these AEDs. They're in your car. But when you do have to use it, you have the best equipment available to make your jobs easier. And who knows, they may save someone's life and maybe somebody you know. And again, we thank you for your hard work and appreciate what you do for us. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce a good friend. He's been very involved with us since day one. He's been kind of a silent leader on this, but he's had his whole team engaged in what we're doing. And I consider John a friend through this whole process, and I'm very honored to introduce to you John Goebel, who's the IU President of the North Region.
Well, I can just imagine the thought when a CEO gets up in front of a group, you're going to hear some long-winded stuff. I don't plan on doing that. This isn't a marketing pitch for IU Health. It has nothing to do with that. It's not even completely about AEDs. See, hospitals traditionally have focused on, we say it's health care, but it's actually sickness care, and we need to change that. We need to start actually preserving life and improving life, rather than just taking care of people when they get sick. So that's what this represents. This donation and all the work that we've done has meaning far beyond an AED. I believe in health leadership that when you let people understand that their work has meaning, they do it differently. From a housekeeper to a plumber to a nurse, when their work has meaning and it makes a difference, they do it differently. And the same thing happens to state troopers. When you know that your work has meaning, you do it differently. Your work does have meaning. We believe that the right equipment in your hands makes a difference. This is a tribute to Superintendent Carter's leadership, to PIERRE's vision, and to your work. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for making a difference in the state of Indiana. Thank you.
Next, I invite Greg I messed it up. Do it for me. Greg Dadinsky?
Yes.
Did I do it? All right. Thank you very much,
You
Greg.
bet. Good morning. I'm one of the heart surgeons in the IU system, and I think with what John said is one thing I do every day, which is take care of sickness. And an AED is the difference between a bad day for the patient and myself and a good day. And when I first joined the board, you know, I've been on a number of boards, and it was started out pretty much kind of nice and easy, and then Dr. Elsner came up with this concept of trying to get AEDs into every state patrol car, and I must tell you that the enthusiasm for Superintendent Carter for all of our crazy ideas, and then giving those crazy ideas to you all to try and effect, was really amazing. The enthusiasm in the board and what we were doing really became a really defined mission, and to be part of something that we're really, as John said, getting to the front end of healthcare, because as a heart surgeon, I'm on the other end of healthcare, and to be able to get it out there to people who really see it from the start, we're going to save lives. And that's what this is all about. And I thank you for running toward the problem instead of away from it. And we're glad we could give you something to make that easier for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. And just ironically, Greg's a big-time marathon runner, and he coerced me into running a marathon with him. And the cool thing about it was in California, so we got to go to Big Sur Marathon, watch that. But ironically, during that race, I don't know if you remember, about mile 20, we saw a gentleman on the ground who had a sudden cardiac arrest and was being saved. So we don't know the rest of that story, but they had the device there to save it. So this person's chances were increased tremendously. So thanks, Greg. I'd also like to introduce a real-life story. And Pastor Dan SCHUMM is a strong supporter of what we're doing because he's a recipient of a shock. So, Pastor.
Good morning. It's good to be with you, especially in the presence of our men and women in blue today. I want to start off by saying I live in a family surrounded by runners. My wife Susan has been running since she was in high school, and my sons Timothy, Jonathan, and daughter-in-law Michelle also enjoy running, and any chance they get, whether it be some kind of fun run, they enjoy it for exercise, a 5K, 10K, half marathons, full marathons, and as of late, my son and wife also are recently completed an Ironman, full Ironman down in Louisville. Me, I have no interest whatsoever in running. And over the years, I've made this quite clear to my family, to the extent that they know that if ever they invite me to join them out for a fun run or to go on one of these little outings, the answer is always the same: absolutely not. But a little more than 2 years ago, my son Timothy emails me with information about an upcoming 5K in Carmel. And I rolled my eyes, and it's like, oh boy, here we go. And within the hour, my wife Sue, sons Tim, John, and daughter-in-law Michelle, and me were signed up and registered for this fun run on Thanksgiving morning in 2014. It was the first fun run I had ever participated in. What was it about this particular fun run that suddenly and dramatically changed my mind? It was one of these. You see, on October 26, 2013, as one of the pastors at Cornerstone Lutheran in Carmel, Indiana, I was getting ready for worship when I suffered sudden cardiac arrest. My heart stopped beating, I stopped breathing, and my doctors have since told me I was dead before I even hit the floor. But as a result of a prompt and appropriate response and an availability of an AED and the men who were part of C-Team at Carmel Firehouse 44, I was resuscitated. And as a result of that, because of an AED being readily accessible, I'm alive here today. And so now, on most any day of the year, I'll tell you, I am still not a runner, and I never will be. But on Thanksgiving morning every year, ever since, I am a runner, and I am proud of it. As one who has been blessed as a result of the presence and availability of an AED, I am honored to be associated with Bolt for the Heart and its efforts to make AEDs readily available throughout the state of Indiana. And this year's run was especially memorable for me and my family, as our 11-month-old granddaughter participated in her first ever fun run with me, her grandpa, pushing her to the finish line. What is gratifying for me about the efforts of Bolt for the Heart is in knowing that 100% of the funds raised go to the purchase of these AEDs. This would not be possible were it not for all of the supporters, the sponsors, the volunteers contributing to this great cause. And going into this year's race, knowing ahead of time that this year's purchase of AEDs would be placed in the hands of you, the men and women of our state police here in Indiana, that made this particular run all the more a privilege and an honor. So as one who is a recipient of the gift of life as a result of an AED, permit me to say thank you to you, our first responders, for what you do for us day in and day out. And may God use these AEDs, knowing that lives will be saved as a result. Thank you very much.
Next, I invite to the podium the President of the Indiana State Police Alliance, Dave KIRKHAM.
Thank you, Dave. Good morning. On behalf of the Indiana State Police Alliance, its board of directors, and our nearly 1,200 members across the state, I just want to say what an honor and a privilege it is to be here with you this morning, be a part of the Bolt for the Heart initiative. I want to thank Superintendent Carter for making the department aware of the initiative and, of course, making the Alliance aware as well. Thank you for his leadership and his dedicated service. Thanks to Pierre, wherever he is. When I asked the superintendent how the Alliance can get involved, he said Pierre's the guy. So I contacted Pierre, and next thing you know, he's helping us with a donation of 10 AEDs. The Indiana State Police Alliance has been serving its members and their families since 1974 and serving the public as well through our many charitable programs. I can tell you when I approached the board of directors, and I think there's several in the audience here today, to consider a donation to Bolt for the Heart, I received an overwhelming response. We see it as a win-win situation, a win for the troopers because they're receiving much needed equipment, and of course a win for the citizens of Indiana, knowing that their first responders are not only well-trained but well-equipped. It's certainly a donation that we pray our troopers never have to use, but so grateful that they have the equipment when needed. Thank you again, and God bless all of you, and Merry Christmas.